Hello and welcome to the 10-minute webinette on lurking. The term lurking brings to mind all kinds of connotations. When I first heard the term lurking, I thought of something hiding and waiting in the background, like a cat or a shark or an alligator. I thought of all of the scary movies that I don't like to watch, or the zombie movies that my husband sometimes enjoys watching, where people are waiting in ambush. I thought of the kind of voyeurism and entertainment that comes with social media or reality TV. Now, while lurking can make us think of these terms, it means something quite different in teaching and learning online. When we talk about lurking in teaching and learning online, it is a way to describe the learners in your course who are the silent members. These lurkers rarely participate or contribute to the discussions or online activities, whether it's a synchronous or asynchronous class. So, for example, your lurkers might listen or read the online discussion posts, but they rarely post or participate themselves. And commonly, lurkers express their discomfort with turning on the camera. So lurkers in teaching and learning have been a topic of exploration within the research for about 10 years. Early research on lurking was quite negative. The early research on lurking suggested that these students in our courses, in our online courses, were free riders who benefited from observing other students participate, and that they were very passive and didn't contribute very much themselves. So certainly the early definitions of lurking follow those negative connotations that I thought about when I first heard the term lurking myself. More recently, researchers in education have argued that lurking is actually a beginner or novice form of online participation and online learning. Lurkers commonly don't feel confident, they don't feel safe, they don't feel comfortable contributing in an online class. So what they're doing is they're learning by watching and observing. It's like a cognitive apprenticeship. That's how it's often described in the literature. The students are not ready to participate, so they're looking for models of how to participate. They're watching other students to get examples of how they can get into the conversation or enter the conversation. Now, the reasons why they may not feel confident or they may not feel comfortable or safe are quite diverse. They have been described as how it feels a bit socially risky for some lurkers to come in an online environment. Certainly, if you've participated yourself in a class of 100 or a workshop or a class of 100 within a Zoom environment, seeing all kinds of little tiny boxes with people in it can look very intimidating. For some folks, being on camera can also feel intimidating, especially if someone is a quite introverted person. They may not feel very comfortable speaking up in front of so many people in this forum. So they may feel intimidated by the group or the group dynamics. If the group dynamics are very fast and very social, they may feel shy about participating or coming into the conversation. Students may also lurk when they don't have a lot of familiarity with the subject matter. So they don't want to come across as saying something that doesn't sound smart or doesn't contribute anything useful to the discussion. So let's get on to the key question that probably brought you to this 10-minute webinette. How do I lure those lurkers into more active participation? Beyond saying, I expect you to participate in this online class by coming in, turning your camera on, sharing ideas, putting discussion posts in, completing the activities, how can you bring those lurkers in from passive participation to more active participation? So my first suggestion is to start small and start slow in very low risk ways. So for example, when I have lots of lurkers in my online class, I will often post a very easy question either on the discussion board or share a very easy, straightforward question within an online class like this, and ask students to post a short 1 or 2 word response in the chat. If we're having a synchronous class, I'll say, let's take a moment to watch those answers as they appear in the chat, to give the students a little bit of time and space to contribute their answers and also to see answers that are coming up, right? They may say a similar answer, or they may say an answer that builds on another answer, but it gets them into the process of participating, even if it's a small way in a chat. If it's an asynchronous discussion, then it may be a question that's not too difficult to answer so that they can have a chance to participate and know that their answer is likely not going to be incorrect. So I start with small, low-risk ways. If I am working in a synchronous environment like this, we know from research, and I know from my experience, that lurkers often respond well to small tasks that allow them to remain anonymous. So another small, safe step that you can take with your lurkers is to use a poll, either a simple poll within Zoom software. Something could be slightly more creative if you want to use Mentimeter, or contribute to a word board if you wanted to use Padlet, for example, as some of your ed tech tools, and have students make an anonymous contribution to a discussion or to answer a question if your class is more fact-based, or if you want them to have a chance to contribute in an anonymous way. So far, we have small, low-risk strategies. We have anonymous contribution. And the third way, because I know I only have 10 minutes in my 10-minute webinette, the last way that I suggest you draw the lurkers in and get them to actively participate more in your class is by getting them involved, by drawing upon topics or ideas that are either get them emotionally involved in the topic. So if you can get them to provide examples from their own lives, or if you can get them to use the research to back up their own opinions and get their emotions involved, that we know from the research allows the students to get more involved in the conversation. We also know that if emotion doesn't work for your class because your subject matter doesn't lend itself to getting students emotionally involved, we know that choosing topics that are relevant to the students' lives also gets the lurkers more involved in class. So for example, if you were talking about bolts on a bridge in engineering, you might use a local bridge, have the students calculate the number of bolts in a local bridge as opposed to speaking about bridges in general. So looking for examples to make whatever you're studying relevant to the individual students' lives in the class, and have them look for relevant examples for your subject matter in their own daily lives. So before we go to review the play, 3 ways that you can get your lurkers to participate more actively in your class is by starting slow, small, with low-risk activities. Number 2, by using some anonymous activities in your class. And number 3, by getting them either emotionally involved in the topic or by choosing topics that they can make relevant to their own lives. But keep in mind that you may always have some students that lurk in your course. You may always have some students who are going to take longer than your course in order to find their way in learning to be more effective online learners, particularly if it's their first semester in an online course.